All right. Good morning, Dolphins fans. We are here. It is finally here. It is game day. The 2022 NFL season is kicking off here for the Miami Dolphins this afternoon. My name is David Fernandez. Welcome to Yard Prep on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. I am joined by my co-host, Michael Quirk, and the awesome and baseball-minded Eric Weideke. Thank you for joining me, guys. Before we get into our thoughts for the game and the season today, I want to tell you a little bit about our sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest, fastest, and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Members play the over and under on between 2 to 5 players of their choice. You can pick from a variety of sports, not just football. You could pick from a variety of stat types. You could even mix and match different sports in one entry. The more picks you correctly predict, the more money you win. Payouts on PrizePicks can be as high as 10 to 15 times the bet. Head over to prizepicks.com and use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, to get a deposit match up to $100. That's 5 FIVE. Stay tuned a little later in the show. We'll have some PrizePicks player spotlights for you, specifically talking about some of the Dolphins for today's matchup against the Patriots. Again, that's prizepicks.com. And the promo code that you're using is FIVE. Okay, guys. So we've got week 1 here on tap. Dolphins are hosting the New England Patriots. Obviously we've got Bill Belichick patrolling the sidelines on the other side. But, you look at this Dolphins squad and then you look at this Patriots squad and you feel like, maybe for the first time in a little while, the Dolphins have the upper hand here from maybe a talent standpoint, certainly. Who knows with coaching, because obviously this is Mike McDaniel's first season as head coach. But going into this, Michael, I'll go to you here first. Going into this week 1 contest against the Patriots, how are you feeling about what the Dolphins might be able to do here in week 1?
I'm in a dangerous place because I'm feeling very confident in the Dolphins' chances today, because even dating back to when Tom Brady was under center and for the Patriots and not the guy throwing into quadruple coverage, Miami still played really well against New England at home. I think they've won 7 of the last 9 against the Patriots in Miami. And you're right, the talent disparity is there. As much as Patriots Twitter doesn't want to say it's there, it's there. And so you've seen the line start at 3 and then went up to 3.5 and has held steady since then. So I'll be really interested to see how today turns out. But I feel good about the Dolphins' chances. And we've been waiting since the Tyreek Hill deal to see what this team will look like. And, we've seen glimpses and so forth. We saw the deep pass to Tyreek that was, just talked about a teensy bit on Twitter. But now we get to see Jalen Waddle in there as well. So it's going to be a fascinating day.
Yeah, Eric, I want to go to you on this one. Tua is one of 2 quarterbacks all time that have 3 wins. Here, hold on. The entire list of quarterbacks undefeated in the regular season, against Bill Belichick. It's Tua and Russell Wilson. Both of them are 3-0 against Bill Belichick in the regular season. How are you feeling about the Dolphins going into week 1? How are you feeling specifically about Tua?
I feel good about Tua. And as much as the Dolphins, I feel good about Tua, admittedly for non-Tua reasons. Because I think that this Dolphins team, I know Bill Belichick his thing is always taking away the number 1 weapon on offense. But when I look at the Patriots on defense, I don't see the personnel. Bill Belichick might have a great scheme in place for what to do with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but I don't know if he has the personnel to keep up with the kind of speed that the Dolphins are going to bring to the table today. And I'm super excited to see more of what we saw, in that running game. I know the running game was, much maligned during a lot of the preseason, kind of showed some life in that 3rd preseason game. So I'll be interested to see number 1, what does the offense look like with Waddle and Hill on both sides? How are they going to utilize that speed? I imagine there's going to be a lot of pre-snap motion, things of that nature, misdirection. And then I want to see how the backfield works between Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. I have a pretty solid feeling that we're actually going to see, in terms of carries, maybe that work go 50-50 between those two guys. Because I really like the burst I saw out of Mostert in the preseason.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about some of the weapons. Obviously, the Dolphins have brought in on the offensive end, especially considering over the last few years, this offense has looked, inept at times. It's been a while since the Dolphins have been one of the top point scoring and yardage offenses in the league. And when you look at the personnel that they're going to put out there, there's the potential for the Dolphins to put up some points this season and obviously rack up yardage and things of that nature. And a lot of that sort of confidence is not only in the players, but also when you look at who they brought in to be the head coach, Mike McDaniel, offensive minded, sort of a running game guru, so to speak, from San Francisco, among many other stops. Let's talk about Mike McDaniel here for a second. He is the 14th coach in franchise history when you count the interim coaches. He's the 11th head coach to start the season, 11th new head coach to start a season for the Dolphins. And, the Dolphins have had a mixed sort of results with new head coaches. Obviously, that first year with George Wilson, they went 3-11. But of the 10 head coaches before Mike McDaniel in their first season, 4 of those managed playoff runs. So Don Shula did it in 1970. David Wannstedt did it in 2000. Tony Sperano did it in 2008. And then, believe it or not, Adam Gase did it in 2016. Brian Flores started 5-11, and obviously we'll see what happens with Mike McDaniel here in 2022. But Eric, you were talking a little bit about the running game. Michael, I want to go to you on this one. We didn't see a ton of sort of the running production, I guess, throughout certainly through the first 2 games of the preseason. We saw a little bit there in that third game of the preseason. What are you hoping to see from the running game here today?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be interesting. Like Eric mentioned, how the carries are going to be split. But really what I want to see is, can they keep a defense honest? Of course, Mike McDaniel loves to run a run-heavy offense, but when you have as many toys as the Dolphins do for the passing game, you just have to at least be able to set up the pass, and that's where Tua is so dangerous, is when he's able to work in play action and so forth. So we did see in that third game, even though there were a lot of guys out for Philadelphia, they did execute really well. There was an absolute ton of pre-snap motion, and I think that that's going to be another huge part that we'll see. And I'm interested to see the implementation of a fullback again. It's quite a throwback, but
yeah,
I'm really interested to see how Mike Gesicki, how he's developed, because we know that having a tight end who can block is such a big part of what Mike McDaniel wants to do. And we know that's not exactly Mike Gesicki's strong suit. And so seeing how they use him in run blocking is going to be really interesting for me as well.
Yeah, Eric, I want to sort of jump on what Micah was saying there about Mike Gesicki. It was kind of a strange preseason for him, to say the least, right? I mean, he was with the ones in that first game, but then in that second game, he played deep into the third quarter. He had some issues, blocking throughout the preseason. And Gesicki had even mentioned at one point during the preseason that, he was basically a wide receiver through the early part of his career. So it's really learning almost on the fly here at tight end. Incredibly talented guy, right? He's somebody that could be a major offensive weapon for McDaniel and the Dolphins. What are your hopes for Mike Gesicki? Do you think he's going to be a major part of this offense, or do you think the Dolphins either trade him maybe during the season or let him walk in free agency a year from now?
Ultimately, I think this is going to end up as a case of the Dolphins just eventually choosing to cut their losses. I think if they were going to trade him, they would have already done it. He, like you mentioned, he's an uber talented player. I just don't know if I see the fit with what they're trying to do. And I know that you would think a guy like Mike McDaniel, I know some people will say, well, find a way to use him. Well, it's not necessarily that simple. You've got other guys on the roster like Durham Smythe and Hunter Long who are pretty good blockers, and at least I can see Durham Smythe being kind of the ideal tight end for this system if you're not going to have a superstar type player. He's got solid hands, he's dependable. But I still expect the splash catches to be there for Gesicki. He might not be as common as we saw, but he's still going to be a factor in the offense, specifically most likely in the red zone, between, when he's getting those opportunities to go up and kind of just make the catch over the defensive backs.
Absolutely. Actually, I want to pivot back to talking a little bit more about Tua here. We saw on Twitter that he was one of the first guys at the stadium for the Dolphins today. He was, on the field working out. I think it was like an hour ago. So, he was getting his work in early, kind of going through his progressions and whatnot. And I mentioned earlier that he's one of two quarterbacks who is undefeated against Bill Belichick in the regular season, 3-0. But when you dig a little bit deeper into that, his numbers, they don't jump off the page against the Patriots. So, 2 touchdowns in those 3 games, 2 interceptions, 456 total passing yards. That's a 152 yards per game average. And then he's completed 51 of 75 passes, so 68%. Michael, I want to go to you on this one. Tua hasn't, blown us away from a production standpoint against the Patriots specifically. Obviously, we've seen him have some great games in the past. With these new offensive weapons in tow, what do you think Tua can do against this Patriots defense? It's one that, might not be as loaded as it's been in the past.
Yeah, I think I forget. I think it was Eric that alluded to it earlier that Belichick still is a scheming genius, but you still need some pieces there, and he doesn't have the pieces that we're used to seeing. And something that I'm very high on Tua this year. I think there was always context that was needed when people were judging him from afar. When you're looking at the offensive line, the lack of weapons. Devontae Parker, I saw a stat this week, was one of the worst in the NFL last year at creating separation. It was like 129th out of 132 qualifying receivers or something like that. That's not going to be an issue with Tyreek Hill, I'd say. And so I think a lot of what we've seen from Tua as well is his demeanor, that he's really it's sort of like when you had Mark Richt and evil Mark Richt that Twitter liked to do with the goatee and so forth. We saw calm and quiet Tua, and now Tua's a bit mad. Yeah. And I love to see it. And so I think this is going to be a big statement game for him. A lot of times you talk about hey, is this really going to be a different mindset going into the game? I think you're going to see that from Tua. I think he's going to have a big game today. I think he's going to have a big year. And I think he has a lot of people to prove wrong, and it all starts in a little less than 2 hours.
Yeah, and obviously it is a big season for him, from production standpoint and really from a future standpoint, right? We're expecting a huge step forward from Tua this year. Before we pivot over to the defense, I want to talk a little bit more about these wide receivers. Eric, we probably haven't had a wide receiver combo like this in Miami since maybe Duper and Clayton back in the 80s, going way back, right? I mean, obviously we've had many talented receivers since then, but in terms of having guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle together, that's an incredible amount of talent on the outside. The last time the Dolphins had 2 100-yard receivers in the same game came way back in 2016. Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker actually did that against the Patriots back in September of 2016. Eric, with these wide receivers, with Hill, with Waddle, even with Cedric Wilson, maybe even the rookie Eric Ezukanma, do you envision, or I guess I should say, what do you envision the sort of passing game being able to do with Tua under center?
Yeah, so I think you're going to see, because the thing about, I think the offense, the big question is still with the offensive line. So I still think we're going to see a lot of timing patterns, a lot of getting the ball out of Tua's hands quickly, especially with receivers that get open like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You want to get those guys the ball out in space. Although I do think that if we see Hill and Waddle each go for over 100, I don't know if that's necessarily something that we want. I think Mike McDaniel, from just a script perspective, probably wants to run the ball quite a bit more than that. And so if the Dolphins are passing, it might be because they're in a more competitive game than anticipated. But going back to the passing game, I think it's going to be a lot of quick timing patterns. But with personnel just, scaled up to 100.
Right. Hey, guys, Lewis is here. Lewis, the host of the Pulse of Fins Nation here on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Lewis, thank you for joining us. We've been talking a lot about, what we're expecting from the offensive side of things going into today's ball game. Just real quick, what do you envision from the offense here going into this game against the Patriots?
Well, first of all, can you hear me? Because I'm doing it from my phone right now. So everything good?
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that
perfect.
Rolls Royce that you're in?
No, good old Ram 1500. So it gets the job done. So anyway, so for the Miami Dolphins offense, I got a little bit into it yesterday when I did the new show that we're doing now, Behind Enemy Lines, where I talked with Colby Fauser of ATB Network's New England Patriots division. So what I'm expecting from the offense, and honestly what he's expecting from the offense, is the speed is ultimately going to outplay the New England defense right now. There's just not enough speed on the field to be able to keep up with the likes of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert. It was his biggest issue was that if it's going to end up becoming a foot race between the Dolphins offense and the Patriots defense, then the defense of the Patriots is just not going to be able to keep up. That's his honest opinion on the whole thing. And I appreciated the unbiased opinion simply because that's kind of how I look at it too. Not that he agrees with me that it's unbiased, but you know what I mean. Right. It's a lot of other Boston national media, like I know NBC Boston was saying like, oh, the Dolphins are no big deal. We have a better roster than that. Like an actual person who's actually been watching the Patriots and keeping an eye on them as a contributor for a network is saying, I'm not buying the hype. So it's basically going to be a very interesting thing to see because this is what we've all been waiting for, right? This is what we wanted to see. We wanted to see Tua in a full game. Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert. Did we get the full inactives list yet? Is Alec Ingold finally going to play?
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm expecting it at any point, really. Right.
So we're finally going to get to see that little wrinkle thrown in because we haven't been able to see it all off season, all preseason. No, nothing on that. Jalen Waddle's going to get to play finally. Tyreek Hill's going to play a full game, assuming he doesn't complain about the heat too much because he was the one saying it. It's like, it's so hot down here. I was like, yeah, it's hot down here. Get used to it. And so that's ultimately what I think is going to happen. I think I'm not going to anticipate a bunch of bombs because I know that's what we want to see, right? We want to see like Tua throw 60 yards passing down the field, shut everybody up. Listen, he can dink and dunk like Josh Allen did against the LA Rams on Thursday, and we'll be just fine. I am not concerned about whether he throws 20-yard passes. If he throws 5-yard passes and they get a ton of yak afterwards and we win the game very easily, like who's to complain? Why are we upset about that? And somehow I know that when the post-game show happens and I show up full-time, that's what it's going to be like. It's like, oh, well, Tua didn't do this and Tua did that. Every single mistake, be ready for this, every single solitary mistake that is made by Tua in this game is going to be hyper-analyzed, put under a microscope, and used as justification for why Skylar Thompson should be the quarterback instead of Tua. So we have to be prepared for that, and we're going to have to drown out that noise. The only thing that he can do is be perfect, and even if he has a perfect passer rating, if he doesn't hit a 30-yard bomb, nobody's going to be happy. So just be prepared for that.
It'll be interesting to see how they decide to approach from an offensive perspective because, as you said, Josh Allen, who's got one of the strongest arms in the league, for the most part, he kind of dinged and dunked his way down the field, and then they hit a big one in the fourth quarter, and that could be a sort of a similar approach here for the Dolphins. It'll be interesting to see how much they use the run to set up the pass, that old sort of football cliche, right? But it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. There's no doubt about that. But we've talked about the offense here for the first 20 minutes. Let's pivot over to the defense. Obviously when they brought in McDaniel, he brought in, a ton of new offensive coaching, guys for the offensive coaching staff. But a lot of the defensive coaches, they kept a lot of that sort of together, and there's some continuity on the defense. The Dolphins are bringing back 95% of their starts on defense from 2021. So it'll be fun to see how that continuity sort of helps them. They had 48 sacks last year, which is one shy of a team record. Over their final 9 games last season, they were second in the league in scoring defense, allowing just 15.6 points per game. They were third in total defense, fourth in passing defense. So we really saw some improvements from that defensive unit in the second half. Obviously, we know we've got guys like Xavier Howard, who leads the NFL in interceptions since 2016. He is 6th right now in Dolphins history with total interceptions. He's got 27 of them. If he gets 5 this season, he'll have the most for a cornerback. And then obviously if he gets 8, he'll tie Jake Scott's record. If he has 9, he'll set a new franchise mark. We saw great things last season from Jalen Phillips. Let's talk a little bit about this defense, guys. Michael, I'll go to you first. What are your expectations from this defensive unit based on maybe what we saw last year and what we're seeing moving into this one?
Yeah, I expect it to be you want guys to feel comfortable in having another year in the system. There's the continuity there. And there's a lot of young pieces who have shown huge flashes. And the biggest thing I'm looking for is a huge jump from a couple guys. I'm looking for a huge jump from Javon Holland. He's so versatile back there. He feels confident where he's quick making plays, but it seems like the game is slowing down a bit for him. I expect another huge jump from him to becoming one of the best safeties in the NFL. And Jalen Phillips, he really came on strong at the end there. And of course, Jason Taylor is where some of the comps have been coming from. And strangely enough, Jason Taylor has been very, very complimentary of how Jalen Phillips has looked. And so I look to see a huge step up for him as well and becoming that next great Dolphins pass rusher. And I think that all starts this year.
Yeah. Eric, I want to go to you on this one. Who from the defensive side of the ball really stands out to you as a potential playmaker, difference maker this season?
If I'm looking for somebody aside from, necessarily the obvious characters, I think this year it's going to be 2 guys, and it's going to be a pleasant surprise, I think, to a lot of the fan base. I think 2 late additions I made to the defensive line are going to be huge this year. Melvin Ingram and Trey Flowers. And the reason being is when it comes to that fourth quarter and you're trying to protect the lead and you're playing in this South Florida heat and it's 90 degrees, you want fresh bodies cycling in on that defensive line on a constant basis. These guys are veterans. They've been there. They've done that. I would be willing to bet you'll see those guys making key plays in the fourth quarters of games, at least 2 or 3 times this year. Either those 2 guys, whether it's a strip sack or what have you, those guys are going to be involved late in the game when the pass rush is needed the most.
Yeah, and it'll be exciting to see how those guys perform with that pass rush. And obviously, when we're thinking about the pass rush, what makes a pass rush effective a lot of times is when the secondary gives them a little bit of time, that extra half second to get to the quarterback. Lewis, I want to go to you on this one. Obviously, no Byron Jones this week, or no Byron Jones for the next 4 weeks, right? So with that injury over on the boundary, we talked a lot during the preseason about how the Dolphins are going to fill out that cornerback depth, and they brought in Mackenzie Alexander, but he immediately got hurt. But then they didn't really bring in any extra veteran help. They're going to kind of go with the in-house guys. Lewis, so my question to you is, how do you expect the secondary to work, out there on the boundary? Do you envision somebody like Nick Needham moving to the outside, or what do you think is going to happen there on the opposite side of Xavier Howard?
Well, I said it on Pulse of Fins Nation on Tuesday, and I'm going to stick by it. I know Alfredo, he's going to say it was Keon Crossan who's going to end up on the boundary with Needham staying in the slot. But I'm going to stick by my earlier recommendation, is that I think that the best thing that Miami can do right now is to make sure you have your best guys on the boundary. And right now, the best guys that I know for a fact are the best guys, right? Are Xavier Howard, obviously, and then Nick Needham. If Keon Crossan proves to be great, then awesome. Congratulations to Chris Greer for finding another diamond in the rough. If Kader Kohu turns out he can handle the big spotlight, fantastic, awesome for the Miami Dolphins. But right now, given the circumstances, I would really rather have the guy that I know for a fact can do the job at a decent level. Obviously, Nick Needham is better in the slot. That's where he's made his money. He's an awesome slot cornerback, probably the best we've had since the likes of Bobby McCain before he got shifted out to safety. So to be perfectly honest, like I said, I think the best thing to do is Nick Needham on the boundary. And then if you really need somebody to come into the slot, we have a lot more options there than we do on the boundary. You could easily move Javon Holland into the slot position, and he would be great over there. And then for safety, you still have Eric Rowe, who, by the way, was our tight end eraser last year, with the exception of Darren Waller, because Darren Waller is not a tight end. He's a wide receiver who just happens to be 6 foot something.
Right.
And so I don't even count that as a tight end, really. So with that in mind, he was actually one of the players that I said was going to be underrated in this game, is that Eric Rowe probably going to get a lot more snaps than we're thinking because he has the ability to shut down those tight ends. Jonnu Smith, the other guy's Hunter Henry, right, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're going to need the likes of him in order to get the job done today. And I think it would not be that difficult of a transition for Holland to stay in the slot and let Eric Rowe and Brandon Jones be the safeties for this game, because that's what they did last year until Holland really came into his own. So having that versatility at those positions and allows Miami to have more freedom to experiment with the boundary position. I still think the best shot is Nick Needham. If Alfredo was right and they go with Keon Crossan, okay, and we'll see what he can do. But either way, it's difficult for me to anticipate Miami struggling too much, because it's not like the Dolphins have a lot of speed to contend with right now. Right. Their best bet, and this is something that Colby had mentioned last night on Behind Enemy Lines with me, is that their most significant addition to offense was Devontae Parker, a guy who, if we really look at our wide receiver core now, would he be like wide receiver 4? Yeah, for us, and now he's going to be counted on to be their number 1 guy. Maybe Jacoby Myers is, and then Parker's 2. But either way, it's like there's nothing on this Patriots offense that scares you per se, except for the usual like execution, the pick plays, and things like that. How do you get past the elite level, well-oiled machine that Bill Belichick always runs? Of course, that's going to be weakened now because it was Brady running it before, and now it's Mac Jones, and Colby's wasn't 100% convinced on Mac either. Like, he had been hearing a lot of stuff about he's taking a great jump, but then we look at the preseason, and of course that infamous 6 coverage interception. Yeah, Mac does not exactly strike fear into the hearts of defenses, I don't think. That doesn't mean they're not going to take him seriously, but I am anticipating that my PrizePicks prediction is going to be good, and Mac Jones is going to throw at least 1 interception today.
Do you make anything of the fact that the Dolphins elevated Verone McKinley, who traditionally plays safety, from the practice squad for today's game?
I mean, that could indicate that maybe they do want to have Javon Holland play in the slot, or maybe they do want to have Eric Rowe play in the slot, which means they need another safety to take over that position. But to be perfectly honest, part of me is just thinking, not really. I think it's just so they have that depth if something happens. Right. That's also the River Craycraft thing. Even if Eric Ezukanma is inactive, like some folks are predicting, I mean, they have to elevate somebody. You know, they're not just going to say, oh, you know what, we don't really want to elevate anybody today. It's like, why would you do that? They're going to elevate somebody. And right now, we only have 5 wide receivers on roster. Now, Craycraft makes it 6 for today. And of course, we know that the cornerback position is a little bit weak right now. It's a little shallow. So, yeah, throw up McKinley in there and see what he does. So I'm not 100% worried about it. It's not a big deal to me. And so I think the Miami Dolphins are going to be just fine with it as far as the secondary goes. Today, it's going to be a little more difficult come like week 2, week 3. But for today, I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. We've got a question here, and I know that we talked about Tua quite a bit earlier in the show, but Lewis, we didn't really get your take so much on Tua. So, guys, do you think Tua can get over 300 yards today? That question comes from J Gaming 123. Lewis, what do you think?
Oh, okay. So me first. Could he? Yes. Do I anticipate it? No. And the reason I don't anticipate it is because I don't think, like I think I said on Pulse of Fins Nation, I think Tua's going to be a star today, but it's not going to be specifically in numbers. Like, he's going to get numbers. Don't get me wrong. He could end up maybe like 270, 280 even. depending on how many times they throw the ball. But you heard Mike McDaniel. He wants to run the ball like 20 times per game. Yeah. And if that's the thing that he wants to do, if we can get that running game going, now that Teron Armstead is in full time, Connor Williams is in full time, Robert Hunt is in full time, so all the starters are in there now. If we can get that ball running, then Tua's not going to have to do that much. So if your PrizePicks is trying to get the over on 3, what is the yardage on Tua anyway on PrizePicks? Does anybody know?
Right now, the PrizePicks yardage is 225.5 for Tua. We're going to talk about who's one of our spotlight guys for PrizePicks, so we'll talk about that in a second.
I would definitely pick the over on 225, but if you're trying to get all the way up to 300, you don't get bonus points for that. But I don't think Tua's going to hit that many yards, but he's going to look really good today.
Michael, you think he gets over 300 yards?
No, I'm going to echo what Lewis is saying there. In that, can he? If you put a game plan around him that's specifically just trying to air it out, yeah, of course Tua can get over 300. He's fully capable of that, especially with what he has around him now. But will he?
Yeah.
No, I take the over on the 225.5 as well. But no, I don't see him going over 300 today. Not for how the offense is going to set up.
Eric, what do you think?
I'm gonna echo everyone else. I mean, personally, I think the Dolphins get up, 10, 14 points early, and then they just start trying to run the ball and bury the Patriots that way. So I just don't see it in the game script. Honestly, I'm even a little antsy about the 225.5 just because I don't know if Tua's gonna throw the ball more than 20, 25 times today, realistically.
Yeah. So let's take a look at Tua's numbers here for PrizePicks. And remember, PrizePicks is our sponsor here for today. You're using promo code 5 FIVE when you sign up over on PrizePicks.com. So with our spotlight here for Tua, they have 8 different options for Tua today. I picked 4 of them. We talked quite a bit about the passing yards total, 225.5. I'm with you guys. I would lean towards the over on 225. But if it were much higher than this, I don't know that I would go over. But there's a couple other ones that are interesting. So 1.5 passing touchdowns, 21.5 passing completions, and then 31.5 passing attempts for Tua today. Let's talk about that touchdown one. Would you guys go over under on 1.5 passing touchdowns? Eric, I'll start with you. What do you think? Does he have 2 touchdowns in him?
Yeah, I think like I said, just because I don't think he's going to go over 225 doesn't necessarily mean I think he's going to have a bad game. I think he's going to be really efficient. I think over 1.5 is there.
Michael?
Yeah, I'm going with the over as well. I think 2 is the floor for this game.
Yeah, he's only thrown 2 touchdowns over 3 total games against the Patriots so far, but obviously we know he's never had the offensive weapons that he has. Lewis, would you go over 1.5 touchdowns?
I would, but I just need to point out that my prediction about Eric Rowe being an underrated player is obviously wrong because apparently he's inactive today. So much for that idea.
Yeah. So the inactives. The inactives have come through here for the Dolphins. So Savon Ahmed, tight end Tanner Connor, Trey Flowers is inactive, Eric Rowe, as you mentioned, Skylar Thompson, which I guess isn't really a surprise, Eric Ezukanma, which might be a little bit of a surprise, and then Noah Igbenogany, which is definitely, I guess, a surprise considering the state of the quarterback.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out for sure. So let's since there's no Ezukanma, they elevated River Craycraft, so I guess maybe they'll use him in special teams, I would guess, because he has returned kicks in the past. Not that it really, returning kicks. I mean, you think about it.
Bill,
how many kicks
Waddle,
actually
Holland,
get returned?
and Mostert. That's going to be the returners. I'm sorry. It is what it is.
But so let's keep going here as we're wrapping up here soon on some of these PrizePicks spotlights. Let's talk a little bit more about these wide receivers. Obviously, we've got the 2 heavy hitters for the Dolphins are Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So our PrizePicks spotlight for the wide receivers, they have a number of different options for both of these guys. There are 4 different options on PrizePicks for Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I've identified 2 of them here. I've gone with fantasy score, so that kind of brings it all together in terms of touchdowns, receiving yards, receptions, things like that. And they set the over-under for Tyreek Hill at 15, and they set the over-under for Jalen Waddle at 13. Lewis, I'll go to you first on this one. Would you play the over on 15 fantasy points for Tyreek Hill in this one?
You would think it's a safe bet, but perfectly honest, I think that the safer bet would actually be Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
And the reason that I think that is because the more known name, the one who's the known commodity, is Tyreek Hill. So the Patriots are going to put an extreme emphasis on covering Tyreek Hill. In fact, one of the things that last night on Behind Enemy Lines was that Colby was saying that they literally have a corner whose job it was to basically cover Tyreek and get safety help and stuff like that. But again, what that does is when you cover Tyreek that way, that's going to open the door for Jalen Waddle. I expect him to be open a lot today because you can't cover both of them at the same time effectively. Jalen Waddle can get separation on his own. Now you add Tyreek to that, and you're going to have to double team somebody. So my guess, and this is Ron's guess as well, based on what he said on Pulse of Fins Nation on Tuesday, I think this is going to be the Jalen Waddle breakout game. So I would say no to Tyreek, but absolutely yes to Jalen Waddle.
Eric, so Tyreek Hill in 4 career regular season games against the Patriots has 24 receptions, 401 yards, and 5 total touchdowns. Based on that previous experience, do you think he would get the over on that fantasy score?
You know, I lean the same way that I think Lewis does on this, and it's for a slightly different reason. I know Tua and Tyreek have worked out a ton in the offseason, and my whole thing just goes back to, I think Jalen and Tua, the chemistry that they have, obviously Waddle, over 100 receptions last year. I would look for, Jalen Waddle, whatever his receptions total is on PrizePicks as well. I'd go over that just because I think Tua is going to target him a lot today. Tyreek Hill was playing in a much different offense in those games. Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to tell you the over-under for Waddle's receptions on PrizePicks, 5.5, and then 7.5 targets.
Easy.
Oh, I would definitely pick the over on that. Waddle is good. Listen, Jalen Waddle is Tua's security blanket. He's basically what Jarvis Landry was to Ryan Tannehill, except even faster. So there's no way that he's not going to hit Waddle a ton today.
Right. All right. So let's pick a guy that we should probably fade on PrizePicks, to be honest, Dolphins fans. Mike Gesicki, his totals are to bet over on PrizePicks. They put it at 27.5 receiving yards, 3 receptions, and 4.5 receiving targets. Those are 3 of the 4 options for Gesicki on PrizePicks. And I say fade him because over 7 games in his career, 7 regular season games in his career against the Patriots, he only has 11 catches, 23 targets, 106 yards, which works out to 15.1 yards per game, and only 1 receiving touchdown. Michael, I'll go to you on this one. If you had to play with Mike Gesicki on your PrizePicks board here today, would you go over or under any of these?
I'd go under in receptions. For sure. We haven't seen him as a big part of the offense so far leading into this year, and I don't see him being a huge part of the offense this year either. So I could see a 2 catches, 35 yards game. He gets loose across the middle while everything else is blanketed, gets a 20, 25 yard catch. But I don't see him being a big part of the offense, getting targeted terribly much. I definitely don't see him going over 3 catches.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see how it plays out. Averages less than 2 catches per game in his career against the Patriots. And again, 15 yards per game, only the 1 touchdown. And now Tua has so many more options in the passing game. What do you think, Lewis?
So I'm actually going to throw you guys for a loop here.
Uh-oh.
I picked the over on Gesicki today.
Which one?
The catches, on the pass catch.
On the reception?
And also on the receiving yards, too, because honestly, with the way Gesicki catches footballs, you don't really need him to catch the ball a whole lot to get a lot of yards, because his main gimmick is making attacks in the seam. Now, here's the proviso. All this time that Gesicki has been in Miami, he's basically been the most dangerous weapon who run routes, right? Because aside from Devontae Parker and then last year Jalen Waddle, the only one you could really be scared of was Gesicki.
Yeah.
So, of course, Bill Belichick is going to lock down that one guy. Of course he is. Now, though, things are different. Now you have Tyreek Hill. Now you have Jalen Waddle added to that. Now you also have to put in extra linebacker or safety help to account for a running back running out of the backfield. So you can't just key in on one guy. So with that being said, if Gesicki can even halfway block even remotely decency today, just a little bit, he has to do a little bit, he's going to be open for some of these passes. And if Tua hits him, it could be big chunk yardage today. And again, this whole theory of mine bases it on the idea you cannot cover everyone. Somebody is going to be open. So who are you going to cover? Who's the most dangerous one? It's going to be Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. So if you double cover Tyreek and then give safety help to Jalen Waddle, that leaves Gesicki wide open for a linebacker.
Yeah.
So I could easily see Mike Gesicki getting some action today. All he has to do is prove that he's not completely worthless as a blocker, and he's going to get some snaps, I think.
Right. So that does kind of contradict some of the stuff that you've talked about with Gesicki throughout the preseason, but your explanation makes a ton of sense. It'll be
today, yes. I feel that way today because of how Belichick has played Gesicki in the past.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I'm going to wrap up here, guys. So let's just do a quick little around the horn. One, what your prediction is for today. Maybe what your prediction is for the season, maybe a record. And then do you think the Dolphins get into the playoffs or not? Michael, I'll start with you. Prediction for today. What do you think the season record is? And do you think they make the playoffs?
Give me, and these could be famous last words, but give me 31-17 today. Dolphins win. And then give me 10-7 on the year. Wild card berth.
Okay. All right. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, give me 28-17 for the Dolphins today. And 11-6 wild card berth.
All right. And Lewis, what do you think?
So my score has not been particularly consistent because it's hard for me to remember what I keep saying from show to show. I think last night I said like 24-17. So that's what I'm just going to go with. I think the defenses are going to be challenging each other today big time. I think the offenses, because Tua, like 28 points, 24 points for Miami. That's still, considering what we've had in the last few years, that's still a lot. And besides, I think there still might be a few hiccups here and there. Maybe the offensive line needs some time to actually gel and play together. So it might be a bit of a challenge because Belichick is always Belichick. We said it on Pulse of Fins Nation. I don't think we should be scared of them, but he's always going to field a tough defense against Miami. So there's going to be some lumps to work through. They're not going to be able to come up big every single time. But I think 24 points is safe to say. 17 points for New England. I'd say that's a good, decent number for them to be expected. But ultimately, I think Miami comes away with the win today. And as far as the record goes, if they get off to a fast start, if they can torment Lamar Jackson like they did last year, if they can bring down Joe Burrow a peg or two, like Xavier Howard shut down Jamar Chase, that would be awesome to see that matchup. Then, to be perfectly honest, I could see the Dolphins getting out to a fast start. Will they? That's harder to predict, but I'm going to go ahead and just go on a limb here. I say they go 11-6 and they make it into the wild card round because you're not going to beat Buffalo in the division. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm with you guys today. For today, I'm guessing 27-13 is the Dolphins' victory, and then for the season, I'm with you, Lewis. 11-6, and then I do think they make the playoffs, and I actually think they win a playoff game this year and make it into the divisional round. Obviously, a lot of that will depend on matchups and health, but we'll see. So the Dolphins are favored today, -3.5 at most sports books. The over and under for today is 46.5. I think most of us, I guess, would play the under on that one. It'll be interesting to see. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Obviously kickoff is coming up, a little over an hour at this point. some programming reminders for you viewers here on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. You've got 5 on the Floor, a daily Miami Heat podcast with Ethan Skolnick and Greg Sylvander. Alex Toledo. Those guys are great at what they do covering the Heat. The 6 Rings Kane show runs weekly. The Canes got a win yesterday against Southern Miss. Started a little slow in that ball game, but they picked it up in the second half. And they've got a big game coming up next week at Texas A&M. Although, with Texas A&M losing to Appalachian State last night, kind of takes a little the wind out of the sails out of that one. But make sure you're checking in on the 6 Ring Kane show. Lewis's show, The Pulse of Fins Nation, that one runs weekly on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on the YouTube channel. Make sure you're checking out what's going on with the Dolphins, and you're with Lewis and Ron Caniff on that one. And then you can be right back here today post game. Check out the Final Yard. We this cast of characters will return to kind of evaluate the performances by the Dolphins today against the Patriots. And then on Monday, make sure you're back on the channel on Monday for the Extra Yard, which is a show with Alex Dono. He is joined on Mondays by former Dolphin Troy Stratford, obviously talking about Miami's performances and things like that. So those are your programming reminders. Guys, thank you for joining me. It's great to have Dolphins football back, and it's going to be exciting to watch. We'll be back with you here post-game shortly after the game is over. But from now, thanks for watching, everybody.